On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, powered by BetUS and brought to you by our friends at William Mattar Law Offices, we will be joined by friend of the show, Mark Schofield. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You're joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, today is the first day in like 2 weeks that I knew what day it was. I ate something green. I'm just coming out of the fog of the holiday season. How's your life?
I've ripped out the holidays pretty much this past weekend. It's out of my house. My house is no longer decorated Christmas. I'm telling you, dude, it's pretty it starts the 31st of October and it ends like 2 to 3 days after Christmas and holiday season's done. I'm good, man. I'm jumping into the new year. I've been working out. I've been eating good. I got some resolutions. I'm going. We'll see if it lasts into my birthday, which is in 2 weeks. That's like
according to that commercial that I keep seeing, the second Friday after New Year's is Quitters Day. I learned that through that commercial.
I think it's true. But I'm going to try to stay on some healthy habits here. But this week's weird, Greg, because I am so used to the habit I always talk about, right? With like these shows and getting ready for a matchup show. One, we just did the Patriots a couple of weeks ago here. So like I know a lot about them. I did a lot of research and could be the most meaningless game in NFL history. And I didn't do anything. So anyone showing up here thinking they're going to get something about a matchup, I've got nothing for you. I don't know if Mark does. I don't think you do. But I will say I almost got the hubris enough to start looking at the Broncos, but then I didn't want to jinx it. I didn't want to go there. I don't want to be the guy that jinxes it. So luckily for Bills Mafia, I stayed away so far.
Good on you. So we'll have Mark up here in just a second. I told him pre-show, I said, I spent way more time looking for weird historic references than I did anything for this game. So without further adu, Mark Schofield. Mark, how we doing, my man?
What's going on, friends? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, buddy.
Happy New Year to you.
Excited to be here.
I am.
Because you agreed to it months ago.
Well, look, let's pull back the curtain here. Aaron reached out, I think, even before the season began, and he was like, "Let's do a Week 18 show," and I knew then, like, what this was going to be. I mean, I knew back in August. I was coming on to just say, look, hopefully Drake May is okay and healthy. That's all I cared about. That week 1 win over Cincinnati kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, wait a second. But then, reality smacked us across the face. But we agreed to do this show a very long time ago. But I knew back then what I was going to be coming on to do, which is talk maybe Drake May being good, Josh Allen winning an MVP, you guys rolling into the playoffs and be hoping for Travis Hunter Jr. Here we are.
Yeah. Well, did you know Drake May was going to be like?
I was just going to say
guy.
That's where mine opened at. Like how has he been? Of what your expectations were, and then he is healthy. Do you want him to play Sunday?
No, absolutely not. Like the words I want to hear. Like you want me my best case scenario for this game? Drake Allen has now been benched. Like he's healthy, clean bill of health. He gets it. Like I want him to play less than Josh Allen. Josh is going to come in, hand off 3 times and get out of the game.
Yeah.
I want Drake to do that, 2 snaps, hands off, gets out of the game. Like that's all I want. To the original question, I was cautiously optimistic that Drake was going to be good. I know that there was a lot of, I was very much Caleb 1A, Drake 1B, Jaden Daniels really 1C. Like I thought all 3 were very excited. I was a little bit less high on the other guys that went in the first round, but those 3 guys, I would have been fine with New England taking any of them. If Caleb had slid to them, if Jaden Daniels had slid to them, I would have been fine with any of them. So I was cautiously optimistic. I think he's been up to what I was hoping for. I think he's given me enough to believe that this year, even with the horrific record and the losses and the, embarrassing performances like last Sunday, like, okay, we got to this point, week 18, knocking on wood furiously right now, with Drake May looking like he's the guy, or could be the guy at least. And he's to this point relatively healthy. Now, we've been here before. A couple of years ago, we were with another quarterback wearing number 10. The people were thinking, oh man, this guy just got us to the playoffs. Like,
you knew better.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
we knew exactly when we had what we had with Mac Jones.
Almost the opposite there, where the infrastructure, the talent, the coaching, everything else was such an insulated bubble that it obviously, now in hindsight, it's easy to say, elevated him, where all he had to do was play within those parameters. Now you almost have the exact opposite. You have, I'll be polite, consistently questionable coaching in some of the.
That's overly polite, my friend.
Things that are there.
I mean, look,
the blocking has been, I mean, there are several metrics that
I think two of the three of us could start on their O-line right now. I mean,
and at like maybe a couple weapons that are long-term pieces, but are 2 or 3 notches below where they would need to be on a winning team. Like Pop Douglas can be on a team. Honestly, Booty looks like he could be on a team. Like those are Hunter Henry can be on a team. Ramondre Stevens. Those are all pieces that could be there if you have a 1 and 2 ahead of each of them, like in those different things. I would assume that kind of chemistry, seeing the flashes from May, that's got to be the part that Pats fans are holding on to, is, hey, despite everything around here, we've seen those flashes, and that's probably allowed for kind of not being overly concerned on some of the other pieces that maybe are not as consistent or not as clean.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much accurate, Greg. I mean, a couple of things. One, how many players off of this roster would Bills fans want on theirs? Like, and obviously put quarterback aside. I mean, you listed, I think, the 3 maybe on offense that could be, I think, role players on Buffalo's roster. I mean, similar with defense. And, it's funny. We just got done watching Notre Dame, Georgia, and watching the game with my son and the family. And my son's like, do you think any of these teams could beat an NFL team? And my instant reaction is, no, absolutely not. But I was like, wait a second.
It's like Kombucha Girl.
This Patriots team, I don't know. I mean, what I saw from Ohio State in the Rose Bowl going up against this Patriots team.
So every time that argument comes up, it's always like, hey, you don't understand. Every single guy on an NFL roster was a draftable prospect, and it's the one that people they always go to, like, oh, but who would cover Jeremiah Smith, or who would tackle Trevion Henderson? But it's the fact that it's the 5 offensive linemen, the 4 defensive linemen. Those are just grown men who are like, that's always the one window I think of, is if you have a team that is really poor in the trenches by NFL standards, all of a sudden it's like, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that New England would lose, but I wouldn't bet on it.
You wouldn't feel comfortable about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think the optimism is sort of how you set it up, that framework, which is, despite the context of everything around him, the fact that Drake May has survived, has shown flashes. I mean, that game against Buffalo a couple weeks, you can see the promise and the potential. And it's not like, again, with the Mac Jones situation, they aren't winning games with Drake May throwing 3 passes like they did with Mac Jones. Like, they're not having to hide him. They're letting him sink or swim. And so I'm, again, cautiously optimistic. This is obviously a massively, critically important offseason for them. Ton of cap space. Can they sign free agents? That I don't know. I mean, what's the draw to come play in New England? It's going to have to be extra commas on the check. So are they going to get into bidding wars? Are they going to, pay big money for a T. Higgins, for example, a name that's obviously been floated around? Or are they going to have to, again, sign day 2, day 3 free agent types, hope to piece this roster together, nail the draft somehow? That might be what we have to do, because how do you convince a top tier free agent to come play for this team right now? It's a tough sell.
Yeah. Well, in that vein, having top pick is, there's some optimism in that as well, right? And the conversation about what to do And what is your feel on that? Is it take a Travis Hunter and pair him with a Drake May and give him that? Or is it, hey, let's get a bounty for this because there's a lot more than a Travis Hunter can fix? And to your point, we were there during the drought years of like, hey, nobody wants to come play in Buffalo. It was the whatever Siberia or something of the NFL, and nobody wanted to come play in the misery. They just thought of Buffalo is terrible, and that doesn't change until you start winning. Obviously, you had that in New England where people wanted to play with Tom Brady. They wanted to chase
people were taking discounts to come.
Took discounts, and we're finally starting to see that here. But that takes time to get, and so you got to build the roster the right way. Is more picks the method to do that with some of the amount of holes that you've got, or is it, hey, let's get as many studs as we can?
Get a star while you can.
I mean, my initial reaction is ask me Monday morning. Like, if they're sitting at 1 and you've got, Giants 2, Raiders 3, like if you've got the 2 QB needy teams right behind you, slide back a spot, slide back to 3, get Travis Hunter and a couple of extra picks. Like, and the idea so much with Travis isn't so much the offensive stuff. Having Christian Gonzalez across from each other in the secondary for the next 5 to 7 years is my dream scenario out of this draft. Like, you could do so much defensively with your coverage structures if you've got 2 corners that look like you can put them on islands. And Gonzalez certainly has played that part. He's given up some plays, but look, he
looks good.
All corners give up plays. And so sure. I think they've got one very good top flight type corner in Christian Gonzalez. Travis Hunter looks like he can be that type of player on the defensive side of the ball. And then offensively, I'd use him for like 10 snaps a game, to get him involved a little bit. But I really draft him as a corner. Again, now you're thinking about drafting a corner first overall, but I think you can do so much with your defensive secondary if you've got 2 corners like that.
Especially how much you guys play man.
Yeah.
Right? And that philosophy is not going to change.
That philosophy is not going to change. You still have to be able to play man coverage in the NFL. And look, you can do single high, you can do 2 high out of it. If you want to live in a 2 high world, you can go 2 man with those 2 guys. You could do so much when you've got man coverage corners like those 2 can be in the NFL. So, I mean, look, coming out of this with Travis Hunter and, just having to slide back to 3 or something like that is an ideal scenario because you could pick up an extra pick or 2. Obviously, you're not going to get a ton. It's not like a team coming up from say 10 or 15 or something like that. Now, if they happen to, they're not going to win this game, but let's just say hypothetically they do, and suddenly they're picking 4, then I think you might have to think about it a little bit. 1, would he even be there? 2, would you go in a different direction? Some of you think offensive
tackles,
offensive linemen, yeah.
But you're seeing that already, and we do this every draft cycle. Oh, this guy's a great tackle in college. Let's kick him inside to guard. His arms aren't long enough. Like the LSU kid, for example, maybe his arms aren't long enough. No, I mean, if you're in a scenario where Travis Hunter's off the board, you've come back, take the best offensive lineman available at that point, like whoever it is. Because let's face it, even if that person ends up kicking inside the guard, it's an improvement over what they've got right now. I mean,
to me, that's
much wholesale other than Dave Andrews.
That's the biggest mistake I think teams make when they go young at QB. And a lot of teams, when they don't even know if they have the guy, is not doing enough in the trenches in front of them. And we've seen teams like, look at what the Lions have done. Yeah. It makes the world so, like, I'm not taking anything away from Goff. Goff is a really good quarterback. He's seen a lot of stuff, but that line makes it much easier for him to play football behind a line like that. And so I guess like one of my big questions in looking at this offense is that's a big overhaul to do in a single offseason. We've seen Brandon Beane try to piece that together with journeyman. Like the offensive line was pretty bad when Josh Allen got here, and it took probably 4 or 5 years before we got this iteration of what is now a really good offensive line. We're seeing how easy it has become for Josh playing behind a good offensive line. Is it reasonable for you guys with the cap space you have, with the draft picks you have, to overhaul this offensive line in a season? Do you think it needs an entire overhaul?
I mean, I think you probably need 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I mean, David Andrews, when healthy, is in an upper tier. I don't want to say elite center, but he's a very good center. But offensive line is a weak link position group. Like if you've got 4 great offensive linemen and 1 that's below league average, you have an average offensive line. I mean, again, we just watched Notre Dame, Georgia. Georgia's left tackle was struggling throughout this entire game. It's a weak link unit, right? Like any defensive coordinator worth their salary is going to say, okay, well, let's either take our best, one-on-one pass rusher and line him up over that guy's left shoulder, or we'll throw every blitz at that player. Like, so you need to get your best 5. And is it reasonable? Can it be done in a year? Yeah, with the cap space and the draft capital. But there's a huge caveat there. It's easier to do it when you have the draw of, like Greg alluded to earlier, come play for us because you're going to win. It's going to be, I don't want to say impossible, but it's going to be much, much, much tougher to totally wholesale rebuild this offensive line in one offseason, given the fact you're probably going to have to pay players top dollar in free agency, because they're not just going to come to New England for the idea of playing for Drake May. Like, he hasn't proven himself to that level yet. Gerard Mayo, if he's still the head coach, certainly hasn't proven him to be the guy you want to go play for. And so can they do it? Is it theoretically possible? Yes. Is it a huge monumental task? Absolutely.
From afar, it almost seems like you want next year isolate a few more variables, make contributions both directions. Like, hey, a little bit better protection, a little bit better weapons. Confirm the coaching question. It doesn't sound like that was going to be my next one. Is Gerard Mayo safe here? I know that all public comments have been, but
I mean, it seems to change week to week. If you would have asked me this question after the game against Buffalo 2 weeks ago, I would have said, look, the fact that they came back, they fought in that game, it's enough, saved his job. But then you go out and you have that performance against the Chargers, and what's an island game on a holiday
everyone
weekend.
Watching.
It's very much similar to what happened last year when they go overseas, they lose to the Colts in embarrassing fashion, island situation type game. And that was sort of, by all reporting, the final straw for the Kraft-Belichick relationship. Owners don't like to be embarrassed. And that was an embarrassing game from New England. I still think Mayo's safe, but again, wouldn't bet on it. And we all know the name that's going to be out there, Ben Johnson. Like, that is the offensive coordinator to
any Mike Vrabel return whispers.
Maybe, but I really think you've now gone from Bill Belichick, defensive-minded guy, to Gerard Mayo, obviously a defensive-minded guy. Your biggest task for this next 2-3 years is to make sure Drake May is the guy. Yeah. You're going to see the offensive-minded head coach if they make a change. If you're Ben Johnson, though, look at all the jobs that are available. Is New England really the place you make your leap? A guy that's turned down Carolina and potentially the first overall pick, guy that turned down Washington and the second overall pick. Like, are you going to now step away from what you've got in Detroit, finally make the leap to be a head coach, and come to New England? Drake May is good, but I don't know if he's that good. Not when you might be, looking at.
The biggest thing that New England and Drake May has is there's not another slam dunk of that spot. There's not, like, if it would be Zach Taylor. Like, if Zach Taylor got canned and you had Joe Burrow like that, okay, hey, that's the automatic. But it's, hey, is Trevor Lawrence with a weaker division better than Caleb Williams in a stacked division versus New England and Drake May, where you got a quicker path to second, but a pretty, uphill climb to winning a division like that. It's all going to be like these combination questions of, hey, what are the best opportunities that are out there, and where are you going to actually get, at one point where it looked like Sirianni might get canned, or it looked like Taylor might, but they both, obviously Sirianni clearly has turned around their season, and now it seems like Taylor, even if they don't make it all the way, they've clawed back into it to where he's pretty clearly safe. And obviously we know the Brown family doesn't make it a habit of paying multiple coaches. So we'll see.
Bills fans hoping Sean McDermott gets fired, and then they can bring in.
That
would be the best situation for Ben.
We would jump in and take Ben Johnson. Just go ask any of our fans; they'll let you know. So before we get into exactly what we're going to see this weekend and the absolute heathens that would wager on a game like this, I had to do a little bit of research, and I went back. So I'll quiz you both. How many times has this situation come up in reverse over the past 20 plus years of the Patriots having things locked up going into the final game, playing a Buffalo team who didn't really want to win for draft position? I'll start with, how many times do you think the Bills and the Patriots played the last game of the year?
And that's like a newer thing, right? With the league.
Was it like 5 times maybe?
In the Brady era, 4. So there was one pass there that was in the mid era, which I didn't count, but in the Brady run, it happened 4 times, and there weren't very
most of them, though, the Bills were like in the hunt.
Yeah,
that's what screwed it. Is that there were the 1 year where it actually would have come up was the 2008 season where it was Matt Castle and it wasn't Brady, and they were playing for the playoff spot.
Yeah.
The year, and then the opposite, the year where this exact scenario came up was in 2014, where the Patriots had it locked up and didn't really care about what was going on. But the Bills had the Sammy Watkins year the year before, so we didn't have our own first round pick. So there was no incentive on the other end of like, oh, we want to lose because we're trying to cling to it. That was a year where Garoppolo played the majority of that game. Brady played like the first drive, sat down. So like we literally never had it in this context of where both the Patriots had it sewed up. There were a couple years where it was the Bills wanted to lose, but the Patriots still were fighting for the bye and hadn't clinched the bye yet back when there were 2. So a lot of those Manning Brady years where they were trying to make sure they could stay separated from a Pittsburgh or a Baltimore or whoever it was at the time. So this scenario, I couldn't find one where it was like this recipe of resting starters. Cause I think as we weirdly put you on the spot here, Mark, of what we think is going to happen this weekend, it's super weird where both teams, Bills fans pretty much just out of pettiness and spite, and Patriots fans out of like the genuine value of the first round pick, both teams are going to be rooting to lose almost, other than the 106 guys on the field, which just for anyone listening, NFL players never, ever will ever tank or not give their all. 1, for health and safety. 2, there's no guaranteed contracts. You have to put good film out there. They're always having to put or genuine incentives. Von Miller has 1.5 million reasons to try to get a sack this Sunday. What do you expect to actually happen when we see this game?
I mean, me to be looking at other games on the quad box more than anything else. I mean, thank goodness we've got that feature. I think we're going to see. I mean, the incentive, the individual contract incentives, like Von Miller's, for example, I think those are always important to sort of keep in mind as we get into Week 18 because, there's a lot of games. I was just looking at the Week 18, like San Francisco, Arizona. Like, I mean, talk about another meaningless game. Neither of those teams going to the playoffs.
The NFL hates this, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, this couldn't be worse.
I was going to say this weekend, much less than in years past, there's like a very small handful of games.
Like last year, you had the AFC South game, which was basically a playoff game Saturday night. And then you had games like all throughout the day Sunday that actually mattered. Yeah. When Week 17 drew to look close, I was like, okay, well, at least we'll get Detroit, Minnesota in that Sunday night window. I mean, even the games we're getting Saturday, it's like
the Steelers
are in. Bengals are fighting for their lives, but the Steelers,
if they lose, the Broncos lose to this Kansas City, Kansas City's going to put out there, man, that's going to be an all-timer.
Well, how about the NFL's gamble? They're obviously banking that a 19-point favorite Baltimore team is going to win and not completely negate any incentive for the Steelers to play. Imagine if that unraveled on the NFL. Imagine if somehow something weird happened and Cleveland won, and all of a sudden now Pittsburgh didn't care in the game against Cincinnati and just all of a sudden starts unraveling. You just have non-competitive game after another.
It's a mess. So, but for this game, I mean, you're going to have players like, say, Von Miller, like, try to get that sack. You're going to have individual incentives. I think really you're going to see, this is going to be very much like that final preseason game where you're going to see a lot of like second team players, third string players getting significant playing time because for Buffalo, the incentive is you're going to be healthy. You're going to get, a Denver team or somebody coming to Buffalo next week. You want to be ready for that.
Yeah, Denver, whoever. LA still, I think LA's technically possible, but it's mostly Denver, Miami or Cincy. I think those are the only 3.
And for New England, look, you don't want any of your 6 good players to get hurt in this game. Like, you don't want that, first of all. So you're not going to see the guys like May and Gonzalez and Stevenson and Douglas and others deep into this game. And you probably want to take a much deeper look at, okay, if you're going to go through like a 45-person roster overhaul, you got to get really long looks at some of these other guys in game types of scenarios. And so
it's going to have be that a backup quarterback. You got some of those things.
Yeah.
What a better way to, like, solidify the number one pick than give Joe Milton 3/4 of playing time.
Let him play, let him throw it all over the yard on Sunday. I mean, why not? Let's have some fun here at the end of what's been a rather difficult season. So yeah, it's going to have, I think, that feel of a third preseason game late in August, when we're thinking about going back to school and Labor Day weekend and all that fun stuff, evaluating the back half of the roster.
Yeah, Mark, I brought up a point on Twitter tonight that, like, in prepping for this show and thinking about this game, that it doesn't come up often. Like we said, historically, this is pretty rare that a game comes like, but when it does, there should be an exception in the NFL policy that just allows as many of the practice squad guys as you want to bring up for a game like this, just to get them. Like, it means so much to those guys. It's really rare that they get this kind of opportunity to come up and play. Like, there needs to be some kind of
almost like in baseball with the September 40-man rosters, right?
Yes.
Expand, like, go to a 65
I don't know if it's all 16,
roster,
but at least give 5 or 8 more or something like that.
Yeah,
something like that. Get more, especially for teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs. Like, even for teams that maybe have, and you want to rest players.
Well, I was going to say, Buffalo is going to, like, we talk about all the time. People are like, oh, just rest the starters. And it's actually, like, mathematically impossible. Like, there's going to be guys that are meaningful to this team that are going to have to play. Like,
some defensive linemen, there's some different guys rotational wide. Like, the positions that rotate, you only have so many, humans to play.
Yeah.
I love that idea. Go to a 65-player roster for the final game. Let's do that.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. So for the absolute sickos who might wager on you just
I don't know how they came up with a line for this.
Like, I genuinely don't understand. But if you do, our friends at BetUS would like you to use promo code YouTube150. You get up to $2,000, matching your deposit 150% on your first one, 125% on your second and third one. Mark, please give sound financial advice of what you would advise our listeners to wager on. If you, I mean,
do not wager on this game.
It's like
that is my advice. Man. Like,
you better buy meme coins.
Yeah, buy Dogecoin or something else. Like, you're just flipping a coin. I mean,
it's so bad.
I'd say the under. I mean, if you,
I think it'll be.
I like that. 38 points.
Have to make a play on this game.
Yeah,
hit the under. Like, again, you're going to see Joe Milton throwing 3 interceptions in this game. Like,
Mitch Trubisky's not good at football.
Mitch Trubisky's going to be handing it off. I mean, play the under. That would be my own advice.
From a practical standpoint, running back's another spot for the Bills where, like, hey, like James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, they have all contributed. And
I don't want to see any of them get hurt.
I almost want Frank.
I want a lot of Frank Gore Jr.
Like, I don't know what combination of practice squad call-ups you can use. Matter of fact, the Bills are even going to try to maneuver one more. They waived Nicholas Morrow, who they'll get back on practice squad. There's unlimited call-ups in the postseason, so he'll be right back on practice squad.
You're going to have to bring a QB up because Josh Allen's not coming back in.
So now you get into the roster mechanics. I don't know. You only have so many game day inactives. Do you bring up a third quarterback when – that means that's one less, I'd rather them bring up an offensive lineman and not play Deion Dawkins. I'd rather them bring up, we've already talked about Terrell Bernard's going to be out. I don't want Christian Benford to play. Like, there's only so many practice squad call-ups, and there's only the handful of game day inactive spots.
Taylor Rapp's been injured on and off. Like, I don't want him playing.
It's a weird, you can't hide everybody. Like, there's not 22 inactives.
Should be for this one. Mark, before we get you out of here, though, I want to hit you with one that I didn't tell you about. But there's been a lot of discourse on the internet, and I've
ask you the MVP question.
I've muted it, Mark. I got it. Well, because you know what, though, like, honestly, I don't respect most people's opinions on it. I don't care. I think a lot of people are being insincere about it and trying to create a conversation, including people that probably shouldn't even be included. But I go to you for quarterback. My brother's a Bears fan. You're the only person he'll listen to about if Caleb Williams is any good or not. Like, so I want to know, because it is a quarterback, this is going to come down to the QBs. What is your opinion on this MVP race this year? And don't feel like you have to say Josh Allen because you're here and we're going to make fun of you and beat you up when you get out of here. Give me your honest opinion on it.
I honestly think Josh Allen wins. Yeah, I do. And it's not to take away anything from what Lamar Jackson has done, because I think he's played an incredible season. And if I do think the voting is going to be very close between the two of them. It wouldn't surprise me if, under the new rules, I know they tweaked it again this year, if you get some weird scenario where some disgruntled sports writer from some place, some far environs, decides to give Josh Allen like a 5th place vote, and that sort of tips the scales. Like, that's how close I think it could very well be between Allen and Jackson.
I even put out there that I think a genuine portion of it will be just enough people saying, well, I voted for Lamar first twice already, and I've never voted for Josh first. I actually think, from a human standpoint, that will be enough of a tiebreaker that just a couple people do that. Because,
and I also think something else happened today that will be important. James Cook was a Pro Bowl snub, right? And there are going to be some people that will look at the Pro Bowl rosters and say, well, Josh Allen,
9 Pro Bowlers in Baltimore.
Yeah. I mean, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, like all these Pro Bowlers around Lamar, and Josh Allen didn't have a ton of Pro Bowlers around him. I think that might also help Josh Allen. So I think Josh Allen wins, and I think he's an absolutely 100% worthy MVP this season. If Lamar ends up winning, he's had a very good season.
Awesome.
Great season.
Awesome. I don't think, we can deny that. I think a case can be made if somehow Cincinnati ends up 7th and gets in. Burrow is certainly deserving of some votes. Not enough to win, I don't think.
No.
But certainly deserving of some votes. The one I'm very, very, very interested in is Saquon, because he means a lot to that offense. But it's also, look, a lot of what he does is powered by the 5 in front of him.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're a non-quarterback, you have to break a record.
You have to. If he had played this week, caught Dickerson, set a new single season rushing record, he's got a stronger case.
Yeah. You have to, if you're a non-quarterback, you have to do something historic.
Yeah. So I think Josh wins. I think he's a very deserving MVP. I think the sort of doesn't have a ton of Pro Bowl talent around him. I think, Greg, your point about the fact that, well, look, I've just voted for Lamar. It's his turn. I've seen people say that. And I think there is a sort of emotional aspect to it where he's earned it at this point. Not like it's a lifetime achievement award, but he's, look, there were people that thought that this Bills team was going to be going through sort of a transition year. We were going to see Aaron Rodgers and Tua Tagovailoa in this Week 18 game battling for the AFC East title. And look at what Josh has done this year. And so I think he's going to win.
Would clinch the division the earliest in 15 plus years or whatever it was, something.
Yeah. That's pretty darn good. And
even both 1 seeds in huge marquee matchups.
Look, even that loss to the Rams was a unbelievable game from Josh Allen. Even his losses have been spectacular. And he's given you sort of, I know at the college level we talk about Heisman moments. He's given you some MVP type moments. I think he wins MVP.
Yeah. The problem with MVP moments is we are such a recency bias, world now, where I thought after the KC game where it was 4th and 2 and he ran in for a touchdown, I was like, that's it, it's a wrap. But then obviously Lamar also has had good games in the mix, which kind of changes things. But yeah, we don't hold on to memories long enough for
they go quickly through our minds, just like tweets. We live in a 240 character world. That's the world we live in right now. So recency bias is a very big thing, but I do think that there's also that recency bias of I voted for Lamar last year.
Sure.
When I've got this ballot in front of me, like Greg said, I want to vote for somebody different.
We got one last one before we get you out here. Carl has a question. The most important person on the Patriots right now is Elliott Wolf. Are you confident that he is a competent team builder? And if he chooses wrong, could it set the team back for years?
That's a brilliant question from Carl. No, I'm absolutely not confident in it. You look at some of the decisions that they've made from a free agency standpoint, some of the contracts they gave out, particularly Alon. Again, as we've talked about, getting the best 5 in front of Drake May is job 1 right now, right? And you look at the way they constructed this offensive line for a rookie quarterback, it wasn't good enough. And so I have serious reservations about whether they'll be able to do it in 1 year, like we talked about, and whether Elliott Wolf is the right person to do that. Obviously, I think he's going to get the opportunity to do it, but I don't have confidence in that it's going to get done.
And I'll throw that in the comment I made earlier. I think there's value in testing both of them next year, Wolf and Mayo, in that, like, hey, if you make the right combinations, if you get the right pieces and it starts going the right direction to where you can sell playing with Drake May, you probably get another good draft pick, but not top 5 again. Now you've solidified, hey, May is the future here, and you want to keep everybody you're there. Or there's almost value in, like, oh, if things go really sideways, you have another top 5 pick. All you have is Drake May. Oh, good. Let's scrap them both, get new, and then you sell Drake May as a selling point of, hey, come in and coach and pick guys for him, and you give a blank slate. It's almost, it kind of proves itself either direction. You either benefit from what is their failure, or you solidify that, hey, all right, we are going the right direction, and you have it. I'm almost assuming that's the direction things go.
Yeah,
but
it sounds like that's what they're going to do. And I think ultimately, look, what is my hope? My hope and dream for this year was get to the end of the year and be convinced that Drake May could be the guy. Like, done. That's all I cared about. It seems like they've done that. Yeah. Next year, give me 6 wins. Like, they don't need to be in the hunt. Like, they can still be eliminated by Halloween. That's fine. Just show me some improvement. That's all I want to see. Like, this is a multiple year turnaround. It's not going to get turned around in just one season. So show me a positive trend line. You know, let's be better at the end of next year than we were at the start of the next year.
Be better than the Jets.
Be better than the Jets, which I don't know. What are they going to do?
Shouldn't be hard.
It shouldn't be hard. I mean, that's a roster that's got a big question a quarterback. Apparently, Aaron Rodgers is starving for attention because now he's saying it might be his last game this weekend. So, I mean,
perfect. See ya.
Don't let the door hit you for like 36 hours or something. So he had to clam back on.
Bye.
Yeah, don't let the door hit you. All right,
well,
man.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you giving us time here. It's
of course.
Kind of a weird week, but
we appreciate you. But as I said at the outset, when Aaron reached out in August, I knew it was going to be weird. I mean, because I knew what we were in for. But it's always fun. It's always fun.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you making time for us, even though you knew it wasn't going to be the most fun conversation that we would have. But next year, I think we'll have some more fun.
Yeah.
And we'll do this again.
Absolutely, my friends.
Appreciate you, man.
See you guys.
So, obviously I enjoy Mark. I never want to see him suffer, Evan or Taylor, any of the guys we've had on. But I will say, I'm a weirdo for podcasts and listen to a lot of other ones. I am a very, very consistent Bill Simmons fan. I listen to every show that he does. He's losing his ever-loving mind that they're starting Drake May in this game and that it could cost them the number 1 pick. And I didn't want to poke Mark anymore, but if Drake May plays this whole game, Drake May is better than Mitch Trubisky right now.
Right.
Like, if they play Drake May this whole game and lose the number 1 pick, I think Bill Simmons is going to have an aneurysm live on his show, and I'm going to drink it in and listen to every second of it.
One of my kids' toys just went off somewhere. I don't know what that was. Yeah, no, I think
it's delightful,
dude. If they start winning, Robert Kraft has to like come down and like pull him out, right? Like you can't, like Mark said, dude, you can't go from the first to the fourth. You just can't. The value, like you lose every bit of. It's such a weird season for them.
You lose the trade leverage of the top 2, and you lose Travis Hunter. Like that the line after the top 3 of leverage of the top 2 quarterbacks and the special Heisman player
for an end of year win that nobody cares about. Like there's ways to have wins.
Historic pain.
Yeah, there's wins within it you can get. And like he was talking about the frustrations of coaching and stuff like that and some of the tough losses they've had. Like you've already the hay is in the barn, as Joe Marino likes to say, for the season for the Patriots. Like they couldn't even embarrass themselves more than they already have. And if you don't have Drake May in, it wouldn't even matter if they did. Like there's no scenario where it makes sense. Like him starting's fine. Maybe you get a quarter out of him and get him some live reps just to like end the year with some more live reps, but they can't play him the full game. It just doesn't make sense. And I know I've been saying like, oh, the Bills don't even want to win this. I think even with the lack of starting talent they have in this game, maybe even with Drake May, like that last game, they played their absolute best football they could play for the first like quarter and a half. And it wasn't good enough to put out the Bills.
Yeah, correct. But
I don't think that, I think even with Drake May, it would be tough for them to be like the Bills depth and practice squad's not terrible. Like if I did have to break down this game, I'd still have it a close one if we were playing their starters. So
especially depth on like the 6th through 10th offensive linemen on the Bills, I feel kind of decent about.
Yeah,
Like,
run the ball all day. You're like you said, you're still going to have Ty Johnson out
Vandemark
there.
and Grable, Anderson. Like we're going to get to see Cedric Van Pam Granger, every fan's favorite 5th-round pick ever, apparently.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be some pretty good play.
Yeah.
The depth on the defensive line is decent. Like,
yeah, we were talking back and forth secondary. Like, I don't think Kyrie Elam has lived up to the pick he is, but like he's a good cornerback 3, and Ingram's like had real snaps.
Yeah, regardless of how we feel about him, like the fact that we're going to play a former 1st-round pick the entire game is still pretty freaking good comparatively.
Yeah. Cole Bishop's going to play in this game.
I was going to say Cole Bishop's one of the guys that might start the rest of the playoffs and play a fair amount of this game, just because there's only so many humans you can swap in and out in these spots. That's another example. It's going to be interesting. Plus, I mean it on the running back part. I don't think you can afford for Frank Gore Jr. to be one of the call-ups.
I don't think he can be it.
So I mean, Ty Johnson's going to get a ton. I don't even want Ty Johnson or Ray Davis to get a ton of the touches. I want to keep them fresh. It's
Gilliam. Give Gilliam a bunch of touches.
Yes. That's one of the best ideas you've had. Oh, that's even better than your 16 practice squad call-ups.
I'm on fire. So speaking of being on fire here, before we get into the Here to Help, my friend Whittle talking about my saying Happy New Year to us guys, and that I need a new apron after cooking Scott Kaskmar. I don't even know how you say his name.
I think Kaskmar.
I did make it. I showed the gif of forcing somebody to look at something. Of the Bills tweeted out like every record that Josh Allen broke this year, and I wanted to make sure that troll saw.
I don't necessarily know what he is or who he is or why he's been so weirdly anti-Josh Allen, but it's weird. Like,
he's a legitimate sports writer for a while. He wrote for Football Outsiders. He did a bunch of other stuff years ago. I don't know how much he does now, but
I respect the bias of Ravens fans. Of course they're stomping for their guy. Like any Ravens fan, I'm not even bothered by it. They're just biased fans. We're biased too. I'm biased for Josh Allen. Like, of course I am. When it's someone like that who's just an objective third party, like not a Ravens fan, not a Bills fan, but he's just like weirdly anti-Josh Allen. Yeah. It's crazy.
He's super anti-Brady, and I did used to like that. Like just because Brady hurt my feelings all the time. But now that I'm an adult, I realize Brady was great, and like now he's not hurting me anymore. I can acknowledge his greatness. So I think he just hates greatness.
Okay.
Like he's one of those contrarians that just hates greatness. But for the Here to Help today, one thing I want to ask you and talk about here is there's been 2 conversations that I think are important heading into the postseason here, and I think one of them we already probably have the answer to. And the other one, though, I don't know how cut and dry it is. I'm not even sure how heavily I'm leaning on it. But one is, both of them are defensive side of the ball. One is the battle between Matt Milano and Dorian Williams. We've talked about it here on the show, how many fans call for Dorian Williams because Matt Milano hasn't gotten up to speed as quickly as fans would like to see him up to speed. Maybe he never gets to full where he was. And how we want to see that going into the playoffs. Is it more 3 linebackers, both of them on the field, kind of going maybe Milano on passing downs and Williams on rushing downs? Where do you want to see that? And then the other one would be, we've seen now almost a month of Cole Bishop playing, and he's playing good. And he's definitely showing the signs of his athleticism and stuff. And we haven't seen Damar Hamlin because of his injury, and still limited in the injury report here all week. And with the Damar Hamlin thing is, I know that he can be a high floor starter, but we haven't seen him in a month. And what's that rust look like? If he doesn't play this weekend, then I have some real concerns. Like, we haven't seen him in a full month. Where's your head at those 2 key positions heading into the postseason? What do you think we'll see?
So for the same reason, I have different answers. We have seen a defined floor and honestly relative ceiling with Damar Hamlin. Like, I don't know that there's untapped further upward potential with him that we haven't seen yet. We've now seen a legitimate sample size of Damar Hamlin. That sample size is a undeniably higher floor than many fans want to acknowledge. People who try to say he's bad or trash or doesn't deserve to be a starter are wrong. He is an NFL starting caliber player. I don't think he's special. I don't think there's any upside that's hidden. I think he's just barely good enough to start. Like, I think that's the kind of player he is. And I think you've shown that there are flashes where he can be maybe even average or slightly above average. Like, there's some stuff where he could be like 23rd in the NFL or 28th or 25th, and like, hey, maybe he's even slightly above average when you talk about 64 safeties starting every game. I think Cole Bishop has shown enough that his floor is close to Damar Hamlin, not materially lower, not exposing obviously the huge play we gave up to Nico Collins. I don't think we've had those kind of big blown communications, and you've shown a lot of nice clips of pretty stout play coming up in the run, open field tackles against Jahmyr Gibbs, enough that like, hey, the athletic upside and profile of why we drafted him in the second round is starting to show enough that, I'll take, on a down in, down out basis, maybe he's 95% of Hamlin, but in some of the flashes, I think he could be the 125% of him that we need for the moments, that there's just not enough upside of what's there in Hamlin that, hey, he automatically gets a spot back. In my mind, Matt Milano is the opposite, where we have seen like materially better all pro level play from him that we've never seen from Dorian Williams. I know a lot of fans got excited because it's easy to see tackles like are a easily translatable stat. And I think people like grabbed onto that meant he was playing awesome. And I think he was playing fine. Like he wasn't bad. I'm not saying he was trash. He was fine. He was Terrell Dodson. Terrell Dodson was a really good downhill thumper, coming forward, read and react, run down linebacker that we had to platoon with Jordan Poyer as the dime linebacker coming in as a third safety down into the box in passing downs, because we couldn't afford for Terrell Dodson to be on the field in passing downs. And when he was, he got isolated and attacked by the other quarterback. That's what Dorian Williams is. Like he is not in a position. I don't know that he never will be. I'm not going to say that, but right now and through 2 years of his career, he is not a sufficient passing coverage linebacker in the NFL. We don't want that on the field all the time. The challenge is at what percentage of that former Matt Milano is going to be there in the playoff run. And I'll defer to, our founder and our business partner, Eric Turner, and the great video breakdown he did, and plenty of other smart people on Twitter chiming in that, hey, we're seeing some of the flashes enough that I want to bet that we're going to see more flashes in the playoffs. It won't be perfect. We saw the play, out in space of him trying to chase down Devontae Adams. I don't even know that at his peak he was chasing down Devontae Adams from behind.
Yeah, and he was missed tackles and open field.
Yeah, Devontae Adams is an elite athlete. Like that's not, that's not a concern for me. Like he's
not a lot of linebackers
down a wide receiver one.
Yeah, not a lot of linebackers do it.
So there's enough for me to cling to the ceiling that we previously saw, that we'll get more of that from Milano. And because we didn't see the ceiling in Damar Hamlin, I'm okay rolling with Bishop. And that's where my tiebreakers are on those two, where I want to defer to the ceiling with Milano. I didn't see that ceiling from Hamlin, so I'm okay rolling the dice with Bishop. And that's why I would go in the playoffs. I hope it's Matt Milano and Cole Bishop.
So for me, Matt Milano's a slam dunk. I don't even think there's a conversation internally about it. I think it's a fan.
I'm surprised what a conversation people are trying to make it out to be.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fan one. I think one, from like a leadership perspective, they believe in Matt Milano. You heard the way everybody talked about Matt Milano in the locker room and his recovery. That stuff matters to coaches, whether fans want it to or not. And I do think he's trending in the right direction and playing some good football. And I think you'll see.
I would say if we had seen like his first game back, if it had stayed at that level, I would have been much more open to be like, man, he's not ready. We can't put him out there, but he hasn't. He has trended up.
Yeah, he's trended up.
Looked better.
He's looking better. And I do think we'll see more of the three linebacker looks. I think they'll find ways to get Dorian out there. I think there's going to be some matchups in the postseason anyway that are going to call for some of those looks.
With all the tight ends and fullbacks they use, like we need to have a base set to go to.
Yeah, it won't be ton, but I think they'll find ways to get Dorian also involved in the run game in situations like that. So linebacker one's not really a conversation for me. I am super conflicted at safety. A lot of the stuff you mentioned is in my head. Like I do think I know people think I'm some Damar Hamlin stan, but I really tried to frame that argument as he's adequate. But I respect an adequate level of safety play. Because I think when we do zoom out and look at play around the league, it's not great. I think there's a lot of mistakes. All the mistakes that DeMar has made, I think are more limited than fans want to admit that they are. And then when you go watch the rest of the safeties around the league, besides like the top end ones, those guys are also making the same mistakes DeMar Hamlin made. Cole Bishop has also made some of those same mistakes. He has a high missed tackle percentage. He's made some of those same issues, but he's also doing some of the stuff that I really like from DeMar Hamlin, coming up and filling the run. Like you said, some of those clips I showed. And you do see the athleticism gap between the two pop in some of those moments, and why the Bills would be in on him as a second round pick and why they were so hyped on him. That athleticism certainly there. You're getting into playoff football, so it becomes a little bit of an area where coach trust matters, and being in games and through battles and trusting that this guy's going to be in his spot every time. I don't know where the coaches feel on that. And so it's, for me, it's like, yeah, I agree with you, Greg, that there's a potential for a higher ceiling. There's probably higher potential for maybe some more explosive plays. Is the return on investment of that potential in this next month greater than the consistency, steady hand of the reliability that the coaches have in a player? But then again,
the test for Sean McDermott in his previous decision making. This will be very, if Hamlin is fully healthy, and that balance of what you just laid out of that consistency, trusted, steady hand, that has been his deferred preference previously.
Well, and a couple other things that play into this is, I think Joe Dana has a voice in this, the safeties coach. I think Taylor Rapp has a voice in this. We've heard Sean McDermott talk about guys having to play next to each other, and who that type of trust and communication that you've built is. Has Cole Bishop done enough in the last month where Taylor Rapp will go to Sean McDermott when Sean McDermott asks him, say, yeah, let's roll with that guy? I don't know. The answers to those questions. One thing that is very intriguing to me about Cole, and again, this will be a Sean McDermott sort of litmus test, is, and Eric kind of has pointed some of this out too, and you see it over the last month, we've seen the Bills play a little bit different from some trends, a little more man coverage, doing a little bit more at the line of scrimmage. I do think Cole Bishop gives you that ability to do it. And like, even in some of those 3 linebacker sets, when he also comes up and is playing in the box, and you look at against the Lions, there's like a row, and it's Cole Bishop, Terrell Bernard.
It looked like an
Dorian
old school
Williams.
Like 4-4 defense.
Yeah, and it's nice, and they've done some good things against heavy run teams. So like, there's some more flexibility, but is Sean McDermott going to defer back to some of the core philosophy of zone coverage and keeping things in front of you, or would he like to get more aggressive? These are things that I don't know. And so I don't have the answer for this one. I usually think I know everything. This is one of those ones, Greg, where I think I'm leaning a little towards Cole Bishop, especially with not having DeMar played over the last month. And I think will legitimately be some rust. Like, he's limited still this week. And if he doesn't play this week, what kind of rust is that going to be going into the playoffs? I don't like that too much. So, but I think there's a lot of good conversation to be had around this safety position. I just hope it stays good, healthy conversation.
Yes, correct. Literally healthy.
Yeah. All right.
We're
gonna do a pick and get out of here, huh?
Yeah. I'm disgusted at us that we've talked this long about this.
Anyways, this was our William Mattar here to help, talking about those positions. Our friends.
Yeah, and I do think that's the biggest question heading into the playoff game. I think everything else is pretty firmed up. Those 2 spots are going to be the 2 biggest questions heading into the playoff game. So shout out to our guys. William Mattar, you know the slogan, hurt in a car, call William Mattar, 844-444-4444. Awesome people to work with. And sneak preview for folks, we just renewed with them for next season. They were so excited to work with us. They wanted to renew ahead of time early for next season. So you will be hearing more from them all throughout next season, including on the postgame show.
That's it.
Speaking of the postgame show, for our loyal listeners, we are going to, obviously, we joked with Mark, but legitimately, this game doesn't have a ton of bearing. We don't think people are going to be jumping in just to talk about this game. It's going to be about who we play. We're not going to know who we play until the 7 o'clock or the 4 o'clock games wrap up. So we're going to postpone our post-game show just 3 hours, a couple hours. We're going to wait and start it 7:15 area as the 4 o'clock games are wrapping up. We'll still do a lot of our normal recap, probably quickly through some of those things, and then get into what the playoff seeding and brackets and what the matchup is going to be, so we can kind of combine both of those. So we will be there for you 7 o'clock on Sunday, pushing it back a little bit so we can talk about both the post-game show and who the matchups are.
You cannot force me to do a drive-by-drive analysis of the game this week.
So I am very interested. What is your score prediction for this specific game that obviously you're going to be wagering significant amounts of your money on?
I don't even care. I agree with Mark. It's going to probably, I think it'll be the under. I could see it being, I don't know, 21-17. Like, there's people are going to score. There's
give me like 16-13, 16-19.
Actually, 21-17 would be,
Right on,
16.
spot
Yeah,
on.
it'd be spot on. No,
I got 16-19. I got like 4 field goals to 3 field goals and a defensive touchdown each.
Yeah, I could see something that way. Yeah, I think it'll hit the under. I do think the Bills win. I think this is their first 14-3 season.
Now, don't get me wrong. The petty part of me really does want us to lose for the Patriots to mess up their draft pick, but I'm still going to be rooting for us to win. I'm still going to be rooting for I don't care if it's Terrell Shavers and Frank Gore Jr. and Alec Anderson and Ryan Vandermark and Tyler and Grable. I'm going to be rooting like crazy for that. I want Quentin Morris and Zach Davidson to score touchdowns. I don't care.
Yeah, no, and I think it is cool to get 14 wins. That's hard in the NFL, even if one of them is against a team that doesn't want to win. It's still cool for the record books. And to your point, man, it was a question I was going to ask, but we're kind of running out of time here. Is like, there's some guys I want to see that we haven't seen in a long time that I want to see get snaps. And I do wish we could pull.
Great call by Andy here. Andy's had some great comments in the chat. He had some really good comments earlier about Williams and Milano as well. But here, the one thing, and you've heard the offense talk about it, they are very well aware that they are tied for the NFL record for most different players catching a receiving touchdown. Gilliam is one of the players, obviously an offensive lineman.
I was going to say, I think it might be like an Alec Anderson.
Alec Anderson would be a really, really good one. I also think that you could see, obviously, Vandermark, any of those guys. If you did bring up a Frank Gore Jr., that opens things up. If you were to bring up a Jalen Virgil, that's another one that could come into play. So
have a touchdown yet?
I think Zach Davidson, but no, Zach Davidson would be another one that would allow for it. So, obviously, that's a fun one, and I think it's been talked about enough that they actually do kind of want that one to be able to go in. So, so Zach Davidson would be an option. Obviously, Reggie Gilliam would be another. Any offensive lineman, if they were to bring up Frank Gore Jr. or Jalen Virgil, if they bring him up as well. Obviously, we saw Terrell Shavers catch one last week.
Get one. Yeah, 1 for 1. I think there's some fun stuff to keep an eye out for. I'm still going to get excited to watch Bills football no matter what. I'm not going to be at the edge of my seat taking notes as much as I do for a regular game, but I am excited to find out who they're going to play. I am a little bit over the anxiety that's looming of the Bengals. I would just want that to be dead and moving on to exactly who they're going to play and breaking that game down because I'm super excited for that. And then, Greg, we're going to have a playoff extravaganza on Thursday the 9th, about a 2-hour show we're planning for. We got some cool guests that we're lining up here, some fan favorites, people that you love to hear from here, Bills Mafia, and we're just going to hang out with friends of ours and talk about what to expect in the playoffs. Not maybe so much the first matchup, but just kind of where the team's at, what the season's been, and just get ramped up and excited for some playoff football, dude. This is what a time to be alive. We are living in the good old days, Greg.
It is. So for one, shout out to you. This has been your brainchild and your baby. You've gotten some awesome people lined up for it and really been wanting to get this going. I think it's going to be so much fun. So we're still going to do a preview matchup. We actually, we've obviously got some different options for each of the different teams we could play. If it were to be Cincinnati, Joe Goodberry, you guys know him so well. And we know all of our Dolphins people. We've got a couple of really cool people lined up if it is the Broncos. So we'll lock that in. We'll still do that Wednesday night. And then we'll also be back for that playoff extravaganza on Thursday night. So tons of content coming for you all over the place. Anything else before we close things up?
Yeah, man, no, I'm excited. I'm in postseason mode. I've been there. I'm trying hard to keep myself from looking at the Bronco stuff because I'm still super superstitious and I don't want to jinx anything. And so I'm waiting to get the go-ahead green light to really dive into whoever that matchup's going to be. Because I think this could be a special fun year and a really cool run here up ahead. And I look forward to enjoying it with you, Greg, and with all these listeners.
100%. On behalf of our awesome sponsors, William Mattar Law Offices, we love working with them. Our friends over at BetUS do ask you if you are going to gamble on this game, please gamble responsibly. Don't be a silly cotton ninny muggins. On behalf of fantastic producer Chris Kepner and my co-host Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.